Hi there, I'm Shelly Gray, and welcome to How to Use Dot Talks in Your Classroom. You probably fall into one of two categories. Either you've already purchased Dot Talks and you're looking for the best way to use them in your classroom, or you are considering purchasing Dot Talks, but you just want to learn a little bit more about the resource before you make that decision. So either way, welcome. I hope you get some valuable information out of this video. Now, before I begin talking about subitizing and why it's important and what exactly it means, first of all, we're just going to do some activities together. These are the exact kinds of activities that you would do in your classroom using this resource. So I'm going to show you an arrangement of dots, and I want you to tell me how many you see. So here we see 8. Now I want you to think about how you saw them. So chances are good that you did not count them one by one. You saw them in a certain way. Personally, I see them as a 6 in the middle, and then 1 on either side to make 8. Somebody else might see them as a 4 on the left and a 4 on the right. Somebody else might have seen 2 on the top, 4 in the middle, and then 2 on the bottom. So as you can see, there are many different ways that we can see this image, and which means that there are many different ways to make the number 8. Let's try another one. How many do you see here? Okay, so we see 7. Now, how did you see them? Again, you probably didn't count them one by one. You probably recognized some familiar patterns. So the way that I first saw them was in kind of these arrows. I saw 3 here, and then 3 here, and 1 on the right-hand side. But then as I kept looking, I noticed that there was a 5 in the middle, like a dice pattern, and then 1 on either side. And again, there's numerous ways to see this. So this can make for some really valuable discussion in your classroom. It's a very low risk for those reluctant participants in conversations. So the kids that normally don't contribute much to a class conversation might find this an easy way to contribute because there's a very low chance of getting this wrong, right? All they're doing is telling you how they see the dots. So it can make for some really valuable discussion in your classroom. It also shows your students that math is flexible. So there is not only one right way to see these dots. There is no right way to see these dots. So math is a very flexible subject, and here we can see why. Okay, next we're going to try something a little bit different, and this is called a quick look. Quick looks are something that are done with most of the dot talks in this resource, and it means exactly what it sounds like. We quickly look at an arrangement of dots and figure out how many there are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to flash an image on the screen for you in a second. I'm going to flash it long enough for you to see the dots and figure out how many there are, but not long enough that you can actually count them one by one. So that's the key to doing this with your students as well. So here we go, get ready. Okay, how many did you see? Okay, so there were 6 dots. Now, how did you see them? Did you see them as 3 and 3? Did you see them as 3 groups of 2? Did you see a 4 and a 2? Right? Again, very different ways of seeing them. Oh, actually, I see another one here. I see 2 triangles. There's a triangle with 3, and here's another triangle of 3. This can make for wonderful discussion in your classroom. Let's try another one. Okay, how many did you see there? So again, we saw 6, but this time we saw them in a different arrangement. One student might see a V with 5 and then 1 in the middle. Maybe another student sees a triangle with 3 here at the bottom and then a line of 3 at the top. So again, math is flexible. There's many ways to see this, many ways to compose or decompose the number 6. Okay, let's try another one. We'll get a little bit trickier here. Okay, how many did you see that time? So that time there were 12. Now, how did we see them? Maybe you saw 3 groups of 4. Maybe you saw 2 rows of 6. Maybe you saw 8 and 4. Lots of different ways. Let's get even more difficult. So this next one you might do with a 5th or 6th grade classroom. Okay, did you catch that? How many did you see? So we had 15 dots, and how did you see them? Personally, I saw a group of 6 on each end with 3 in the middle. But again, This lends itself to some wonderful discussion about all the different ways that we can see the number 15 in this arrangement. Okay, this next one, we're going to change things up a little bit. In Dot Talks, you're not only going to find quick looks, but you're going to find a lot of activities that incorporate different strategies. And here's an example of what I mean by that one. So in this one, we're going to do 2 different quick looks. So how many do you see? And now how many do you see? Okay, so let's go back and have a discussion. So first of all, we saw 4. We saw the top row. And then in the second image, we doubled it to make 8. So this is an example of how we can incorporate addition doubles into our subitizing routine by simply building on the first image. This next one is another example of how we're changing up the subitizing routine a little bit to appeal to older students and to help them visualize important concepts like fractions. Okay, how many did you see? So there we saw 6/3. Let's think about all the different ways that we could visualize 6/3 with this image. So maybe we see 2/3, 2/3, and 2/3 to make 6/3. Maybe we see 1 hole on the top and 1 hole on the bottom. Maybe we know that if this entire 10 frame were filled with this same fraction visual, we'd have 10/3, but there are 4 empty spots, so 10/3 subtract 4/3 would be 6/3. I just want you to think for a second about the amazing conversation you can have with your students just by using a simple visual like this, especially something like fractions, which is typically taught in a lot of classrooms as a very abstract concept. This really brings it back to the concrete and helps students really see what fractions really mean. Okay, so there's some examples of what you're going to find in Dot Talks. Now let's go to the meaning of subitizing here, just in case you're not familiar with the word already. So subitizing basically means recognizing the number of objects in a set without counting one by one, just like you did on the other slides. And here are some examples of images that you can probably recognize the quantity without counting them, just because they are familiar arrangements for you. So why do we subitize? Well, subitizing helps kids visualize numbers, and visualizing numbers is at the root of number sense. It also involves visualizing in different ways and teaches us that math is a flexible subject. So very often we do see a lot of subitizing happening in kindergarten and grade 1 classrooms, but we don't always see it happening in upper grades. And I just want to reinforce the fact that it can be just as beneficial in upper grades as well. We just have to change how we're doing it a little bit. So in early grades, subitizing is providing a really solid foundation for addition and subtraction concepts. So we are looking at putting things together and taking them apart. We're looking at part-whole relationships. We're looking at how we can compose and decompose numbers in different ways, just like we did in the examples at the very beginning of this video, and how you might do with this image here. In upper grades, subitizing can provide a foundation for multiplicative reasoning as we move into multiplication and division concepts. So we're looking at making connections between different multiplication facts, or we can even visualize concepts like the distributive property. So if we look at this arrangement in the dice patterns, what do we see here? We see 8 groups of 3, which can represent 8 times 3. Or we can see 4 groups of 6. We could see 2 groups of 12. So again, so much opportunity for discussion and sharing with students here that is really going to help them build that understanding as they're working on multiplication and division in upper grades. Okay, so let's get into the actual resource, Dot Talks. The big goals of Dot Talks are to help students visualize numbers in different ways. We want to help them build that foundation for number sense and operations, which is so often missing. We see this in kids who just struggle, kids that we know there are certain gaps in their understanding, but we're not sure how to fill those gaps. So this is where Dot Talks come in. We're going to help students build those important connections. We're going to show them that math is flexible, and most importantly, we want to show them that math is fun. and students will love these dot talks. When can they be used? Well, lots of different times. They can be used as a math warm-up to get kids excited at the beginning of math class. As I mentioned earlier in the video, they can be used as a number talk. And they're a great way to start number talks at the beginning of the year because they're very low risk, easy for students to get active in and participating in. You could also use them at the end of class as just a fun way to wrap things up. Okay, and that is that. Now, what I want to show you here is an example of what you're going to find inside the actual files. So there are 3 different versions of dot talks available. There's the one for grade 1-2, one for grades 3-4, and another one for 5-6. So I just want to show you an example. This is coming from the grades 3-4 resource. This is what you're going to find inside. Dot Talks is in Google Slides format, meaning that you will need a Google account. You can save it as a PowerPoint as well if that works better for you. So at the beginning of every resource, you're going to find a very interactive table of contents. You can actually click on each number under the headings and go to that exact slide. So it depends how you want to do this. You might want to start out with some quick looks. So there's in this specific resource that I'm showing you here, there's 20 different quick looks. And then we get into some same different arrangements. We get into more or less using rec and rec patterns. We get into addition within 10 with dominoes, and the list goes on and on and on, working on different strategies. So you can actually decide what concept you want to focus on with the dot talks, and you can use any of them. You don't have to go in the specific order. If you're currently working on doubles in your classroom, you might want to go to the doubles section and work on that. So you'll find this table of contents in all of the different versions. And then what you're going to find is a how to use the slides slide at the beginning of each section. And this is going to show you exactly what to do. Now that you've watched this video, you probably get the hang of the quick looks and how they work. So you're going to, in this case, you're going to flash the slide long enough to see the dots, but not long enough to count them one by one. And then you'll show the blank slide and have students say how many dots they saw, and then you'll show the final slide and discuss. So this is just to support you as you go ahead and use them. And then you're going to find something that looks like this, just like we saw at the beginning of this file. There's no prep for you. All you have to do is click through the slides and have the discussion. Here's an example from the 5-6 version where we're incorporating fractions. This one, we're looking at how many are covered. So we might start out with a quick look like this, and then we have a discussion about how many are covered. And this is going to reinforce the part-whole relationship when it comes to fractions. Here's just some more examples for you to see. Okay, and that is where we'll leave it for today. So I hope this has helped you understand why subitizing is so important in your classroom, how important it can be as your students are building that number sense, and how fun it can be to get your students excited about math. If you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to ask. And otherwise, I hope you have a great day. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.